Morning, everybody. It is wonderful to see so many of you here this morning for our Sunday service, which we are calling our ACS Sunday, because as many of you will know, we have recently celebrated on the 1st of March our ACS Foundation. And it's an absolute privilege to be here. I bring you warm greetings from all at the school. And of course, as you know, we have many of them here this morning. It's great to see you all here, particularly our students have a break from study. But it's wonderful that you've been able to be here this morning. Before I really launch into what I want to share this morning, I just want to say how much we value our relationship with Holland Village Methodist Church. Over the past couple of years, we have really intertwined our ministries together, and I know that ACS International is the main ministry here of Holland Village Methodist Church, as well as surrounding the local communities. And it has been an absolute privilege, and it has been wonderful to see so many of you here from this church getting involved in the life of the school. We see some familiar faces here, people who have been on walks with us for our staff walks that we do as part of our well-being. I see faces coming to support other events we have, such as our back to school party, a spirit decor, and other events through the school. I can't tell you the difference it makes to see so many church members coming in and building relationships with our students and staff. At churches, we can spend a lot of time talking about various strategies that will help develop our ministry, but I honestly believe that nothing beats just being there in the ordinary with people and sitting with them, talking with them, chatting with them. That's the best way that we can develop relationships for the ministries, and I'm very thankful that we have that kind of relationship here between the church and the school. I'm thankful to God for that, and I pray that it will continue for many, many more years. But this morning, I'm speaking about the parable of the mustard seed, and I have entitled this, From Little Things, Big Things Grow. Now, this image here, this is my first attempt at using AI to generate an image, and I think it did quite a good job. I typed in a mustard tree in a field of mustard, and that's what it generated for me, which is great. I did have to add the title over the top of it. But this morning as I speak, I want you to keep in mind this picture here of what a mustard field looks like, and then we've got this one tree which is in the middle of it, which you can see is really quite significant in terms of the mustard that we see here. The parable of the mustard seed is almost the shortest parable that you can find. It might just be the shortest one. There are some other short ones as well, like the parable of the pearl and also of yeast, but it is very, very short. And it is found within 3 of the Gospels, and it's found in Matthew, Mark, and Luke in these various passages. But this morning I'm going to be going to Matthew 13, verses 31 to 32. And whenever I preach or speak from the Bible, I always think it's really important to know the context in which the story is being told. And so this point in the Bible, in the Gospels, of course, we're looking at Jesus' ministry here across the Galilee region. And over the course of the past couple of years, Jesus had been speaking to all of the people in that area. He had formed the disciples, and he had been going from town to town, Capernaum and other towns within that area, and he had been preaching and performing miracles. And of course, word had got out, and now whenever people knew that Jesus was teaching in that area, and whether it be in one of the townships or up in one of the fields, you could always be sure that a large crowd would be there to listen to him. And so during these times, Jesus would do miracles, and he would also be talking in parables. Then in Matthew 13, I learnt something as I was preparing for this sermon today. Matthew 13 is known as the parabolic discourse, which sounds very fancy. But what it means is that in this section here, it's a collection of parables which Jesus is using to explain something. And as we know, parables are stories which have a meaning within them. And in Matthew 13, this parabolic discourse, Jesus is talking about what the kingdom of heaven is like. And he uses a number of parables in Matthew 13 to demonstrate and to provide an analogy of what the kingdom of heaven is like. We have the parable of the sower, which is probably one of the most famous parables, where we have the sower throwing seeds out onto the ground, and some falls on the rocky ground. Some falls within the thorns, and some falls within good soil and grows up and multiplies. We have the parable of the weeds. We have the parable of the mustard seed, which we're looking at this morning, and of course of yeast. Hidden treasure, pearl, and the parable of the net are all found within here. And these parables, each of them give us a little insight about what the kingdom of heaven is like. And the ways that it does this, the way that it addresses it, is that it shows us what the nature of the kingdom of heaven is like. It is something which grows and something which develops if it's given the right care and attention. As I said, it grows. This is something which believers at the time would be hearing and trying to understand as we're in that genesis of Christianity at that point in time. And also the value that people have of the kingdom of heaven, particularly when we're talking about the parable of the pearl. So Jesus is explaining to people at this point in time what the kingdom of heaven is like by using each of these parables. So it's within this context that we come to the parable of the mustard seed. So it's already been read out, but I'm going to read a slightly shorter version of it here. So Jesus told them another parable. The kingdom of heaven is like a mustard seed, which a man planted in his field. Though it is the smallest of the seeds, yet when it grows, it is the largest of garden plants and becomes a tree, so that birds come and perch in its branches. So a few points which I just want to quickly point out about this parable, some of the main points within it, and then I'm going to expound upon those. So first of all, the mustard seed is small. Now, all seeds are quite small. We know that, we have seen them, but the mustard seed is known as one of the smaller of the seeds that people would have been used to at that point. Also, this is something which I sort of learnt in preparation this week, in that the mustard tree, it's not really a tree, the type which they had in Israel. It's a bit more like a plant, and even the parable talks about it as being a plant. It's like a shrub. And a mustard shrub which is doing okay might go up to sort of about waist height, as you can see in the bottom of this slide. If it's doing really well, it'll grow larger. It might come to the size of a person, but it's still a sort of scrubby sort of plant. It's not really what we would think of as being a tree normally. However, if you have a mustard tree that has exactly the right conditions, it's in the right climate, it's looked after the right way, it does have the potential to get that extra spurt of growth and develop into a tree that is a little bit better. And so when the crowds hear Jesus talking about this mustard plant, and he's talking about it as being a tree, and it's like the kingdom of heaven, this is one of these trees which has grown out above and beyond the other mustard plants which are around it, a little bit like that image which I showed you at the start of today. And it provides shade. We have birds which come and nest on its branches and in its leaves, which would not normally happen with a mustard shrub or a mustard plant. And so this mustard tree that Jesus is talking about is something above the ordinary, something which has gone above what we would expect. And it has a transformative effect around it, as we'll see in a moment. So we have unexpected and expansive growth. We have this tiny seed that we begin with. It has a humble beginning. You perhaps don't expect much from it, and that is part of the point that Jesus is making. We have something very small that we start with. We're not perhaps sure of its potential, but of course we know that it can grow up to be very big. And as Jesus talks about, this mustard tree grows up to be so big that it's bigger than what you would expect from a typical mushroom shrub. And that's what the kingdom of heaven can be like. It provides shelter and sustenance for others. He talks about how birds come and they nest in its branches, that it becomes an ecosystem, and that it is something which people are drawn to, or birds are drawn to. And no doubt people who are walking by in a field full of shrubs might find some rest and shade underneath this tree. And so it has a transformative nature on its surroundings. The place is different because of the presence of that tree. And our hope and our great prayer, of course, is that as the kingdom of heaven grows, that it has a transformative effect on our local community and our global community, because that is what we are looking for when we're talking about the kingdom of heaven. Here's another image. This one wasn't AI generated. I did this one myself. You might be able to spot the little bit that I added in there. What I want to talk about this morning is a few things, and that is when we're talking about seeds, there are some components that occur when a seed grows. And that is, first of all, a seed has to be planted. And even before a seed is planted, somebody has to think of planting it. There has to be some intent, some desire that they want something to grow. And so they pick a spot. They then plant a seed, and then in its infancy, it gets looked after, it gets nourished, so hopefully it can grow on and it will become flourished. And so on ACS Sunday, I want to spend a bit of time this morning reflecting on some seeds which have been planted in our community and in Singapore over the last over 100 years now, but also to look forward as well. What are the seeds that we're planting today, and how do we make sure that we look after those so that they grow up and develop into this transformative effect on our society? So, you're all sitting in one of our seeds at the moment which has grown and developed, and that is the Holland Village Methodist Church, which of course used to be known as the Holland Village Preaching Point. You might recognise a few of the faces here. Kwok On. Where's Kwok On here? You see, I've seen it there. You still look just as young today as you did back in that photograph. Amazing. We've got our founding principal, Reverend Dr. John Barrett, in the back there. And I was kind of hoping that, I don't know whether any of the children in this photo are here today as grown-ups. Perhaps they are, perhaps they're not, I'm not sure. But here are some faces here at the very beginning and outset of the Holland Village Preaching Point. For those of you interested in the history, in 2004, the Barker Road Methodist Church was invited to open up a preaching point at what we knew was going to become the ACS International School. And that was prayed over and debated. And in 2005, a memorandum of understanding was signed to confirm that the Methodist Church in Singapore would plant a preaching point here. And so in 2007, the preaching point in Holland Village was opened, and it started on the 8th of July. And the original plan was, let's see how it grows over the next 5 years and see if it takes root and if it becomes a church which we can fully constitute and establish here in Holland Village. And to the day, 5 years later, in 2012, Holland Village Methodist Church was constituted on the 8th of July, Holland Village Methodist Church's birthday, and here we are today reaping the benefits of that. So it's wonderful that we are able to enjoy the shade that was given to us by the planting of that seed many years ago. But of course, our history in Methodism in Singapore goes back further than that, and particularly in the areas of schools. We have a number of schools, and this morning we are celebrating the Anglo-Chinese School, which was founded in 1886. And this was a busy time for the pioneers of the Methodist Church in these late 1800s, because they founded ACS in 1886. The following year, they founded Methodist Girls' School in 1887. And then the year after that, they founded Fairfield in 1888. What a tremendous time of growth. Is that some Fairfield Methodist students at the back there? You were waving, excited by it. Nice to have you here this morning. Then there was a little bit of a pause, and then some more seeds were planted in Paya Lebar in 1916, and then in Geylang in 1924. And then more recently, well, not really recently, in St. Francis in 1960. Lots of seeds planted. And I want you to think about in your mind, over this period of time, how many students have those schools served? Those seeds which were planted so many years ago and that were nurtured and cared for in their infancy stages, but have then grown up to become so big and had so many people go through them and learn about the gospel message and about Methodism. They have done a tremendous job. And these days, I don't know if anybody knows how many students we have in Methodist schools, but I'm about to tell you, 21,000 students in Singapore currently attend Methodist schools. What an amazing testimony to the vision of the people who found these schools way back when, that these schools have been formed, and that all the way back here in 2024, we have 21,000 students attending, and of course on the horizon, even more students coming as well. Here is our ACS founding place on Moy Street. On your left there, you can see a photograph, which is the earliest photograph I could see of the shop house, but it started with 13 boys within that tiny place over in Moy Street. The photograph on the right, of course, is the same place, taken several years ago. And if you go there now, it is called ACS House. I believe it's a restaurant these days. But if you stand outside, there are writings on the wall, photographs that show the history of ACS within that area and how ACS's seed has gone on to become really large in Singapore and taken root and provided some great shelter and protection for all of the people who attend it. So we know it was founded on the 1st of March, and then there's so many timelines, so many events I could put in the ACS history, so I've just had to pull a few out. But I've pulled out the Barker Road Methodist School was founded in 1950 at Barker Road. We have ACS Independent in 1988. Our first seed which went overseas was in 2002, when one of these mustard seeds found its way on a plane over to Jakarta and was planted over there. And now that is a thriving school and is now looking to see if it can develop another campus over there in Jakarta. And of course, we have other seeds which are currently being planted in Bali, with ACS Bali looking to start over the next few years, and also ACS Chongqing in China as well. So really great that we've got these things on the horizon. And then, of course, in 2005, ACS International was founded here on what was the former Buena Vista school site as well. And so we've got much to be thankful for all of these seeds which we are now benefiting from. And if any of you are interested in learning more about the history of ACS, we have these lovely books, and if you'd like one, you can come and get one from me at the end of today's sermon. It's a great history of the difference that ACS has made within Singapore. So if you'd like one, come and see me afterwards. And what I love about the name of the story, it's the ACS story continues, and I hope that that story continues for many, many years on into the future. Here are some pictures I found from the archives when I was looking into the founding of ACS International. You can see here that it was approved in the papers here along with Hua Chong. And then in the Methodist Message, which I know many of you would read these days, looked a little bit different back here. But on the front page, it tells our Methodist community about how ACS International will open in 2005. And here we are. You might recognize this picture. It's taken from about where I'm standing right now. You're all sitting in this hall. It's changed a little bit since then, of course. We've got the bleachers at the back and we've sealed in the sides. But here is one of the first services which was held here during the founding of the school. Here is the picture of the first board, some members who are still on our board. So, of course, we have Mr. Tan Wah Tong, our chairman, since the school's foundation, and you can see other members there as well who are still deeply involved in Methodist circles and also within our school. Here is a family photo. This isn't actually the first year. I couldn't find one of the first year, but the second year of ACS International, and it was just in that infancy. The seed had sprouted and it was starting to shoot up, and these are the people who cared and tended for it at that time. And we still have, I think I counted 6 members of staff who are still serving us today who are in that photograph. And actually one of them's here today, Mrs. Tan, our Vice Principal of the Senior Division. She is here over here, a foundation staff member. So we commenced on the 3rd of January 2005, and we had an initial enrollment of 123 students. Well, I'm pleased to say that we have now grown to have 1,100 students, and we're not satisfied with that. We believe that we can have more students on here on our site, and so another seed has been planted in the ACS story, and that is with the Anglo-Chinese School Elementary School, which will be coming here. We hope to open that in 2026. So we're very excited about that. We're not so excited about the construction phase, but once it's done, we will be very, very excited. And so just imagine that in addition to the 1,100 students which we have in our doors right now, we'll be able to add on another 300 to 600 students who'll be able to come to our school, benefit from our education, but also hear about the Word, and we'll be able to make more children believers and disciples of our true God. So we're very excited by this mustard seed which has been planted, and we'll start to shoot later on this year. And of course, we have another large one many of you will know about as well, and that is our new ACS schools, which we're looking to plant in Tenga as well. And so I've got here one of the images from the Straits Times, which I absolutely love. I think it speaks to the heart of why we are doing this. And that is that the ACS board did the right thing by refreshing its mission to widen its access to children without connections. What a wonderful testimony of a school who's prepared to go out from its home base and make sure that those seeds are spread far and wide, and that we would be able to plant something which will provide for the needs of those students who need it, and give other people opportunities to hear about the Word of God, and hopefully plant another church there as well. A tremendous opportunity. And not only that, but to do it in collaboration with Methodist Welfare Services, who again provide protection and so much service to people in need without Singapore. Again, one of those seeds which was planted many, many years ago, but is now grown and developed and looking after people in our community. So it's a tremendous privilege to be able to pair with them and go forwards to create a special school in Singapore. And hopefully, as we looked at that first image where we have a tree that's sprouting out amongst all the others, my prayer is that this school will sprout out and stand high amongst all the other schools in Singapore as we serve those students who need the most love and care and specialist support that they can get. It's a real privilege, and I'm really proud to be part of a school and a group which has a vision such as that. So here is Tenga. This is where our latest mustard seed is going to be planted. And my question is, as a Methodist community and as an ACS family community, what can we do to help support this seed which is in its infancy? A seed which is just about to take root and will be in those initial stages. And so as I thought about that, I thought, well, how do you look after a mustard seed? Because that's what Jesus was talking about. Well, to look after a mustard seed, there's a few things you need to do. You need to be a bit smart about how you plant it, where you plant it, how you plant it. And so they need to be dug in 5 millimeters deep, 30 to 40 centimeters apart, and with the rows being 40 to 60 centimeters apart. You need to keep the soil moist, but it can never be wet and it can never be dry. So I'm not quite sure how you do that, but it requires some careful monitoring to make sure it's not too much of one thing or too much of the other. It's a balance which needs to be kept there. For the seeds to germinate, it needs to be kept in a very clear temperature range, 18 to 20, very small. But that's what you need to do to see it germinate and take root most effectively as mustard seeds. And young seedlings, they need protection from pests, pets, and weather until they are established. So that last point really jumps out to me as we're about to plant some seeds here in our campus as we develop the new building here, which will have some inconvenience for people. But as it takes root, we need to be asking the question, how do we protect it from all the things which are coming out to get it? When we're talking about our schools in Tenga, which are being built, our new schools and our SPED school, what do we do as a Methodist family and as an ACS family to make sure that it is protected from things which might cause it to not grow as much as we would like it to? And so as I consider how we maintain our seeds, I think about that, how do we do that as a group of Christians who want to see these things go from nourished to flourished? And so, of course, prayer. We must soak it in prayer. All of our projects, we must lift it up to the Lord and commit it to Him. We must do it based and grounded with the foundation of it being in the Word of God, looking at the biblical principles about why we go out and care for people and do the things that we do. We need to be in fellowship with each other. We need to be unified. We need to have a spirit that we're all in this together and that we're going to make this happen and that we're going to protect it as we see things grow from being small in their infancy as they grow through to being mature. We need to invest in our existing seeds as well. We're all beneficiaries of it. Even today in this chapel, we're a beneficiary of the vision and foresight that our leaders had in the early noughties in order to establish this school and this church. And so we need to keep investing in those and also plant and protect the new seeds, which the generations from now, when somebody else is standing here in 20 years' time talking about the seeds which grew and developed, we need to be sure that we are planting and protecting those seeds. So as I finish today, I just want to talk about one example of that, and that is the Paya Lebar Chinese Methodist Church. For all of you who read your Methodist message, you might know what I'm about to talk about, and that is the time capsule which was found in this church recently. I'm not quite sure how they found it, because there was a church member who was involved in some renovations, and they were going through some newspaper articles from a newspaper in Malaysia. And it made reference to a time capsule which was hidden somewhere in this Chinese Methodist church. And they managed to work out that it was near the foundation stone. And so they called in a group which went into the church. They had some ultrasonic equipment and other equipment which they could use to try and find this box. And they actually located it because it was in a metal box. They found it and they dug it out. And here are some of our Methodist pastors holding the box once it had been removed from its resting place within the church walls. What they then did is they took it away and they put it in a climate-controlled environment, and they dried everything out before they opened it up. And here they are now opening it, and you can just see at the bottom here, maybe not so clearly, some books which had been put in this time capsule. And here are all the things which were placed within there. And when I look at this, I think these are the things that the people of the time valued. These are the things which, when they planted it, and they wanted people to find it in the future, they wanted it to show what the things were that were important to them at the time. What was the point of this church? What was the point of it being renovated? And what are the things which are important to them? And so we found a Chinese Bible in there. There was some hymnals in there, some of the songs and hymns which they would sing together. And they had minutes from their meetings. They had copies of the local newspaper that I think had extracts of articles which were there, and a note as well about the church, so that people who found it in the future would have some insight into why it was planted there, what was the purpose of this seed, and as they reflect on it, go, wow, somebody planted this here and now it's grown into something, and we have some insight into why they did it, which I think is fantastic. And so if we were to plant a time capsule, perhaps in our Tenga school, what would we place in it? That the people and the leaders and our Methodist family and our Christian family in 20, 30, 50 years' time, if they were to dig it up, what would they find in it that spoke into the reasons about why that school was founded? What was our reason for it? Why did we choose to plant a seed there? What was our vision for going out into the heartlands? What was our vision for children with special needs? Why did we do it? It's always good to be reminded of that. And who knows whether the leaders at that point in time, when they pull it up and they read it, they might be thinking of similar initiatives and be called true to why those schools exist. We might want to talk about our heritage. People understand what motivates us as a group of Methodists to build new schools and new facilities to help others in our community. To talk about our faith, why it's important to us and why it drives us to do the things that we do, and what our values are as well. I think these are really important things, and as we seek to create this new school and new seeds and new elementary school, which we look to grow and develop like a mustard tree, which will stand out and have that transformative effect on the people in that community, it's always great to look back about why it was done in the first place. And so as I finish today, we're all sitting here as beneficiaries of a seed that was planted back in 2004, 2005 of this school and of this church as well. We benefit from it now, from its shade, from its fruit. And then for us now, we maintain that and we look after it and we protect it as we need to do. But we also need to be visionary as well, looking forward to the future about how we plant seeds. And so as I conclude, I want to refer back to the sermon title today, From Little Things, Big Things Grow. As an ACS family, as a Methodist family, we have planted seeds which we now benefit from. We are like a tree standing in a mustard field. My prayer is that as we develop our new junior school, as we develop our schools in Tenga and our specialist school, that they might grow to be things which stand out, to be visible by the community. That, as Jesus says, grow up to be more than we expect, to have trunks and branches which provide the shade and the care for those who need it within the community, and that it might be something which we can look back on and commit to the Lord and know that we are part of building this community and the kingdom of heaven. Thank you very much.